NBA players will be traded come the trade deadline, or maybe not even trade deadline, even before that, because we have a bunch of players who are potentially on the trading block, you know, as the NBA season, comes into play. And I want to talk about some players who might be traded, whether it be mid-season or coming up very soon, sooner than you thought. Um, so I'll start with the obvious one that I know a lot of people would think about and know would be Jonathan Kuminga. Now, obviously, for Jonathan Kuminga, that will depend on, you know, if he, how it's going with the team and stuff like that. Like, although I know a lot of people will, you know, think and lean towards Jonathan Kuminga being traded, at the same time, I feel like Jonathan Kuminga could also not be traded, depending on what his role looks like and how he's playing and stuff like that. I feel like the Kuminga one is like a really, tricky situation as opposed to maybe some of the other players on this potential list that, I made up. And, I never call for players to be traded and stuff like that. Um, like, I don't want players to have to be traded, but obviously sometimes it works out best. Like one of the players that, I was saying for a while, back before he was traded, was Pascal Siakam. And I know he loved Toronto and he wanted to stay there, but I felt like it just made more sense for both him and the team to make a trade because the Raptors, weren't in, championship contention and stuff like that. And Pascal Siakam, as we just saw, was in the NBA Finals, and he is a win now type of player. And so to me, I felt like um, the Raptors and Pascal Siakam, it would benefit both sides if there was a trade. So obviously, trade ends up happening later on. But like in general, I'm not calling for players to be traded. I just, I know where it seems to, kind of make sense. Um, so with that being said, um, uh, so I said Jonathan Kaminga. Okay. Now let's talk about someone who probably hasn't been spoken about in a while, but they, they definitely are gonna be on the trading block at some point, I would assume, and that is Vucevic. The Bulls traded Zach LaVine. They traded DeRozan, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before they put Vucevic, on the trading block because they are clearly in rebuild mode. Like they are clearly in rebuild mode. They have committed to rebuild mode. They re-signed Josh Giddey. We know they're going younger and stuff like that. And so Vucevic is kind of, the odd man out. Now, with Vucevic's, salary, I don't know what team would be looking to trade for him because the CBA, we know the CBA. It is forcing a lot of teams to be very, finicky. I think that's the right word. Finicky with their financial decisions. And one of them being, trades for players. And Vucevic is making like, 20, 20 something $1 million a year, which is not crazy in today's NBA. But, you know, making 20 something $1 million a year is a little bit worrisome for, like I said, for teams nowadays because of the CBA. Unless he fits like a clear hole in the team, whatever team needs it. But Regardless, I do expect the Bulls to, have him on the trading block at some point. Whether or not he gets traded, I don't know. Somebody said, hi, hello, how you doing? Welcome to the live stream. So Vucevic, Jonathan Kuminga. Another player that could be traded is dun, 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 Kelly Oubre Jr. I know, I don't, unless like my memory is serving me incorrectly. I believe he is on the 76ers. And I know that, again, pretty sure he's on the 76ers. With that being said, if my memory is correct and he's on the 76ers, we know the Sixers are in a weird spot right now. And like they are hoping that Paul George and Joel Embiid, come back healthy and stuff like that. But they are in a weird spot because Paul George is not healthy. And Joel Embiid, we don't know what his health looks like. And so there are a lot of question marks around the 76ers. And obviously, they're not trading Maxey at all. They're not trading any of the young guys. Of course, we know Jared McCain just got hurt too. And one of the things I said about Philly is that they're obviously going to give this season a go as it is. Like they already have Paul George and Joel Embiid like signed and stuff like that. So they are going to, try to make this season be the season. But mid-season, if something comes up, Kelly Oubre is, valuable to, some teams around the league. And his contract isn't that large. So he could be someone that could be moved at some point. It just depends. I feel like trades are going to be very, and this may sound obvious, but obviously dependent on what teams need come trade deadline. But what I mean by that is not just like the regular, this team needs a shooting guard and stuff like that. But I feel like teams are like looking at every little minuscule little detail, again, because of the CBA and the financial implications of taking on someone's contract, like somebody else I'm going to mention in a second. And so there may be a good player out there who gets on the trading block and doesn't get traded because the teams that are, wanting to trade are like, we can't, like, we like him, we like that player, we think he's good. But this is not 2018 anymore, and we can't just, pay the luxury tax. Like, we don't know. We know that this player would make our roster better. But is this player, like, cementing us as a championship contender if we add him on? And that's kind of more the thought process. Like, I know that was always the thought process, but I'm saying, like, more so because of, like, we see what the Celtics did. Jason Tatum gets hurt, and I know that there was rumors that they were going to trade, Drew Holiday and Porzingis anyway because they didn't want to pay, that money. And fair enough, but if Jason Tatum isn't hurt, I don't know. I think it might go different. Maybe only one of those players get traded. Regardless, though, the point is teams are very, particular nowadays about who they're taking on. So another player who could be traded but might be a little difficult due to his salary is Kyle Kuzma. We heard a little bit of rumors about Kyle Kuzma potentially being traded. And it's interesting because obviously the Bucks literally just literally just traded for him. Um, and he didn't have the best, season with the Bucks last year when he got there. The thing is, they're trying to make Giannis happy. They want Giannis to stay. They want to be a championship contender. But does Kyle Kuzma fit exactly what they do? That's the question. And then the problem is his salary is 20 something $1 million a year, like Vucevic. And that's fine. But at the same time, like, again, teams are just really picky about who they're trading for. And Kyle Kuzma, fair enough, showed that he could win a championship. Like, he could be a contributing player in a championship team with the Lakers. But it goes back to what I said earlier. Is Kyle Kuzma going to be the answer to any of these potential teams' problems? And if they're trading Kyle Kuzma, what's happening with Giannis? Because unless they're trading Kyle Kuzma and getting someone better in return, which, again, that's a whole, depends on what they're getting, what's going to happen with Giannis? Because they can't trade Kyle Kuzma, hypothetically, for like an expiring contract just for the salary purposes, but more so for like picks. So that would indicate that they're kind of rebuilding because Giannis doesn't want less talent on the team. So that is definitely something to keep in mind as well. Somebody said, have you ever thought about working for Barstool Sports? I have not, but obviously, they have a platform as well. Sports, I haven't thought about it, honestly. That's my answer. I really haven't thought about it. I enjoy making content for you guys on, my channels and stuff like that. So the answer is no, but nothing against Barstool Sports. I just haven't considered that. I don't even know if they have openings or anything like that. Somebody said Kuzma is always on the trading block. I don't know about that. I don't think he was. I mean, like, on the Wizards, I feel like it made, sense for him to be on the trading block because he, the Wizards were rebuilding and he was making X amount of money in two different directions. So, like, I don't really count that. I don't know that he was always on the trading block when he was on the Wizards. I mean, when he was on the Lakers. I don't remember if he was always on the trading block. I don't think he was, though. Like, I don't think he was always on the trading block, but maybe my memory is incorrect. I don't know. But yeah, Kyle Kuzma, I'm not saying, like, going back to what I was saying earlier, though, I'm not saying that Kyle Kuzma or Vucevic can't and don't contribute to winning. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am, saying is that trades are becoming trickier and trickier. And, the Phoenix Suns, besides Bradley Beal having a no trade clause, which obviously made it like impossible. But like, even if he didn't have that, they were in the second apron, which meant that they could only do swaps. So I use Jimmy Butler as the example because Jimmy Butler was also on the trading block and his salary was probably similar to Bradley Beal's. So the only way that the Phoenix Suns could have traded Bradley Beal was by doing like Bradley Beal for Jimmy Butler. Like they couldn't aggregate salaries. And, that's a problem because that limits how many players are available. Like how many players who are making $50+ million are on the trading block? Not many. Like teams are not typically trading, players who make $50+ million. Usually those are like your star players. So that's one thing. But two, again, like it couldn't be like Bradley Beal for we'll bring them into the picture, even though they're on different teams, but Kyle Kuzma and Vucevic. Even if the salaries matched, they can't do that, or they couldn't do that. Um, so that's why a player like Kyle Kuzma and Vucevic can absolutely contribute to winning. And I believe that they will, well, Vucevic especially, Kuzma maybe, um, but that they will potentially, and again, Vucevic, I think yes, will be on the trading block. Whether or not they actually get traded is like a different story, of course, um, because of their salaries. Like for Jonathan Kaminga, it actually works out for him and the Warriors that he is making, you know, the $24 million, range or whatever he's making. And I talked about this when he signed his deal. It benefits both of them because the Warriors, if Kaminga was making $8 million or so, whatever his qualifying offer was, making a trade would be very hard for the Warriors because they are trying to win now. And so you want to talk about a team who, I'm not saying they're trading for Vucevic or anything like that, but like if they couldn't trade for Vucevic if Kaminga was on the $8 million salary, right? Most players who are on that type of salary are going to be maybe young guys who are on the rookie deals, or a good player, but he's like a mid-level exception player, and they're looking to trade for, I don't even know if necessarily you say more star power, but more like really, really good, talent. I don't even know how to, say it any better than that, because that doesn't mean the $8 million guys aren't good and talented. So the point is, Kaminga making that kind of money allows the Warriors to be able to make a trade if they want to, and if Kaminga wants out, to get a guy like maybe a Vucevic or Kyle Kuzma or somebody else who we know can contribute to winning, who we know is a good player, and the salaries will work. I'm saying oppositely, unfortunately, for teams like the Bulls and maybe the Bucks in this scenario, teams have to take on their $24 million from Vucevic. And the difference between Vucevic and maybe like Kaminga is that Jonathan Kaminga, if you watch the page, I'm a fan of his. I think he has superstar potential written all over him. And the thing with Kaminga is that Kaminga is a 22, 23-year-old guy with like so much potential and upside, right? Like there are many teams who, I don't know how many teams. We know the Suns, the Kings, and the Heat for sure want Kaminga, because the upside is all there. With Vucevic, good and talented, but it's like he has to go to a win now team. Like him going to the Phoenix Suns, if they start rebuilding, that doesn't make sense for them. So that's why the salary, even though it's like the same money, means something different. So somebody said Vucevic is 34. Yeah, so that's just basically what I'm saying. Like, it's nothing against Vucevic. It's just like different timelines. So those are the potential, maybe trades. So thank you guys so much for watching this live stream. I hope you enjoyed, and see you soon.